We are back on schedule, barely, but we are here, and thank you for coming back. And kind of have mixed feelings about starting with this. It is, first of all, it's so beautiful, which is why I am. But I think it's the low res version, and perhaps it's a touch predictable. I bet many people who watch this show were thinking, I'm probably going to start with this, but I'm doing it anyway. Artist Journal, September 26, 2023, broadcasting from deep in inner space as we build the Cartographer's Workshop on the Pirate Ship of the Mind. My name is Adrian Pocobelli. Welcome back. So, again, probably many of you have seen this. And again, this is probably the low-res version of this work. But I just thought it was so cool. And for those that don't know, this is, of course, Uxine collaborating with Rare. And you gotta love it. Of course, the Boston Dynamics dog in the middle of this Uxine work here. And it was really interesting, actually, how they collaborated. So here's the first. And again, when the high-res version comes out, if there's a higher res version, I will definitely show that. But here, as you can see, Rare, GM, guess which two artists decided to make some art together. And I think it's totally brilliant, and it's kind of funny it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it looks even better, smaller like this. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. You gotta love this stuff here too. This interesting shadow. I assume it's, you have two kind of pastiche artists to a certain degree, is one way of describing them. To a certain degree. And it makes you wonder what the original of this was. I mean, if I had to hazard a guess, this looks like Julius Caesar being stabbed in the Senate, right? At the Ides of March. I mean, who else would be kind of stabbed like this all at once? And maybe it's togas here. That would be my guess. And there is the dog as Julius Caesar, perhaps. I'm sure we'll find out at a certain point. Usually Uxine reveals. So it's interesting how they did it, because it looks like this composition was probably by Uxine. And you gotta love the yellow halos here. And again, finally here, the great thing about Uxine's work is it does work beautifully low resolution here, as we see in the background here. And again, I'm not sure what the proper resolution is. We'll find out when it's minted. But interestingly, then Uxine posts, think it's a good time to make a JPEG. Where's Rare and Uxine? So just a really cool work. And again, this would seem like conversely, Rare made the composition here. But not entirely clear. I mean, it's an interesting thing, because actually the composition looks almost a little bit like Uxine, but it was painted by Rare. It's a deep integration here, isn't it, in the collaboration? Of course, the colors here are Uxine colors. This here looks like a Rare dog composition, but this looks like an Uxine edition with the old Apple computer with the skull in it, but painted in normal colors, you might say. So all very cool and beautifully painted, by the way. Let's quickly open this. This one is a little higher res. As you can see here, this beautiful painterliness that one can only assume is Procreate. Of course, I believe both artists. I mean, I remember way back before Uxine blew up, when Uxine was even sharing his brushes. How great. That was amazing. You know what's funny? I never downloaded them. And it's fine, because maybe it's all for the best. So if I do start doing, paintings, I'll just make sure I have my own thing. I won't get the temptation to just use the same brushes. But both artists work in Procreate, if anything. I mean, I saw this tweet by Gogolitis, who was retweeted by Aspirite. And what I was going to say here is, if anything, this is also a kind of testament to the power of Procreate, isn't it? I mean, look at this. Look at how great this software is. Arguably, like I was going to say, a revolution on par with Photoshop. Maybe that's overstating it, because the revolution of Photoshop that was a massive paradigm shift. I'm not sure if it's on that scale, but from a digital painting perspective, I would say it is. And as I've said before, I think the brilliance of the Procreate brushes really forced Adobe to up its game when it came to paintbrushes. This, to see this 3 or 4 years ago, I'm not sure you would have seen it. Maybe the software, maybe Procreate was around and working this well, but these textures and everything, it's really beautiful. I guess is what I'm trying to say here. It's just really beautiful. And again, you can't do everything, but I may try. I mean, it makes you want to get out the digital paintbrushes, doesn't it? And the beautiful thing is, you know, I think a lot of people out there can just go out and start making beautiful paintings. We see it with Procreate. So, all to say, that's not to diminish all of the brilliant decisions that have been put here. Look at this, just all of it, this wonderful textures here, beautifully painted. And Uxine is always experimenting, again, the dexterity here with these brushes. And contrasting beautifully using, kind of what looks like a rough canvas, even potentially like an oil pastel type of brush, and then contrasting with what looks like rares, kind of more traditional, I'm tempted to call it, Sargent paintbrush set, but who knows? I have only dabbled in the paintbrush. Look at this, how beautifully it's painted, though. Just expertly done. Again, probably from a coffee shop, which is significant in my opinion. Mobile art, as I like to call it. So just beautiful. And again, one can only assume iPad artists, for the most part, right, as the main tool. I'm sure the GIF maybe is done in other programs. Not sure. All to say, exciting. I think it was just really exciting to see this. I think a lot of people were excited by it, and I think just a really cool collab. So looking forward to the mints and seeing what happens. Looks like it's just a preview to whet everybody's appetite here. So excited about tomorrow. We're gonna have Arthemore. I'm gonna find out how to pronounce Arthemort's name tomorrow exactly. A really interesting figure who appeared on last week's Spaces with Ombeline at the end. And so we're doing a space now this week. Curating, exhibiting, collecting, and writing about all things related to crypto art. Former Sotheby's NFT specialist and Art Crush Gallery co-founder, and Art Crush Gallery are the ones that put all these digital billboards up around Times Square and everything. So a super interesting figure here, person to talk to. So we're going to talk about all of that tomorrow. I've pinned this up in the Twitter feed, so it's easy to find if you want to set the reminder. It should be great. And so join Runetoon and me and Artemort for probably a really interesting conversation here. So continuing on, a lot of comments on last episode, and it continues to kind of amaze me. I mean, this was posted maybe 17 hours ago. I guess it was about 5 p.m. my time, and it's 11:30 my p.m. 11:30. So let's say 7. I mean, the views on Twitter are amazing, and it's interesting. I have to go to the comments now on Twitter too. Thank you, Ed Marola, for the positive commentary. Retromania, I was watching this episode on X on full screen, then kept trying to click the notifications. Really enjoying the episode. Thank you. Lily Illo. I mean, it's great to hear from all these artists. Love to hear you speak to the courage of mark making, Adrian. Yeah, and Ile also was highlighting that as well. This is such a poetic way to understand the taking of pen to paper, mouse to pixel, word to prompt, brush to canvas, finger to button. Love to hear you speak to the act of making. Thank you for what you bring here each week. Well, thank you for the very nice comments. And as I wrote to her, I'm glad that resonated, because I think that does. I think, and we're going to get into the art critic topic because that kind of came up. But yeah, I mean, I think people who actually are in the act of making art and understand what it is to put your soul out there, and especially when you're starting out, when you're not going to be as good as later on, to just put yourself out there is, sometimes it's not understood what that all entails from a personal point of view. You kind of bare your soul to a certain degree. And so when you start really pushing aesthetic norms, as we see sometimes with, for example, Nuv 1914, and then doing it with, conviction and then persuasion, that's what it's almost all about. That's one of the things it's all about. Rosaitio, thank you for the shout out. Always thrilled when you talk about my work. Thank you. Rustic, who we started the episode with. This episode was so beautiful for me to watch. First of all, thank you so much. It's very moving to see someone analyzing your art with your knowledge and artistic vision, and always in such a passionate way. Your interpretation of my process was really on point too. I tried to use a cubist vision for these works, and also doing it in a painterly way. The revelation I had during the process is that cubism is a great form of art to manifest memory, or to use memory in a more irrational way, but able to be precise, at least in intention. Because you can't remember everything perfectly, maybe not me, but I can put the elements I remember all in the foreground, the things that allow me to represent what I want to represent. And about landscapes, I have to say one of my biggest inspirations has always been Van Gogh, which clearly showed, and we're going to see that work was minted, which we saw very clearly yesterday. I've read a lot about him and his life. There's a brilliant biography that was put out. Quickly on Van Gogh, I believe I saw those guys interviewed, the author interviewed on Charlie Rose like 15 years ago. And the author of, I can't remember the name of the book, we can look it up, of the Van Gogh biography, it sounds to like that he suspected that actually these two kids actually were responsible or likely responsible for Van Gogh's death, not a suicide, which is interesting. So continuing on, I've read a lot about him and his life, and I live in a rural area which generates really Van Goghian landscapes for me to enjoy. Also, when you talked about the courage and craziness, loved it. Also, your hair. Well, looks amazing. Thank you. I mean, I'm trying to just keep it under control, really. Thanks a lot. Sorry for being too long, taking the opportunity to share my thoughts, and super appreciated. It is one of the joys of doing this program is the fact that so many of the artists actually chime in and reply. So very much appreciated. And thank you, everybody. Tater Tots, Bombattle, Quampa, and everybody. Human Boy, Monsieur, and Illusional. Thank you for all of the comments. It's much appreciated. And on YouTube, just a few here, a couple here I wanted. So this was important here. Great Cableen, also known as Ombelane from Object. Great show as always. Side note, we do love what you're doing, and I totally appreciate that. As I said here, I hope I didn't sound too pointed in when I was discussing, because of course it was brought up yesterday. If I'm going to mint, why don't I mint on Tezos? And I was sort of like, well, Object never asked, but it's also, just so people know, because it's true, there are a lot of Tezos artists, and this show is kind of built on Tezos culture to a certain degree. It's expanded from that, but it did start there. So it's a legitimate question, which is why I feel the need to explain it a little bit. And I think ultimately it's the fact that, first of all, though, as I was mentioning yesterday, the Zora guys reached out. They reached out. They just say, hey, why don't you do this? And they seem enthusiastic. Maybe they'll put it on the homepage somewhere. They have the free mint sort of mechanism, and they have a track record of actually putting out stuff like podcasts, and they're actually doing well, that people want to mint them. So they've kind of created a market, you might say, for that. So those are kind of like the overriding reasons. And I don't mind, frankly, being on different chains. I kind of always kind of preach that. And to me, it's almost like a feature over a bug that it's on a different chain. And just another comment from Cableen. And thank you for mentioning my ethical dilemmas. I had an existential crisis this weekend over this. And again, I think it's fine as long as you don't sell anything. If you're not, maybe you put a 5-year, I will not sell from when I buy something. I will continue not collecting for the moment because I don't want to be stressed by underlying issues, but you're right that the key is not reselling in general. Exactly. And another thing about that vote, I think it was like 85% were saying, hey, that's fine. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get much higher ever, because there's always going to be somebody out there who's maybe just for fun, or maybe because they're mad that they're not on the homepage, they're going to say, no, you shouldn't be able to do that. So I would say that's actually a pretty high approval on that idea. As I was saying here, overwhelmingly in favor of you collecting. Salieri, extremely interesting information and opinions as always. Well, thank you for the very nice comment, Salieri, and I appreciate all the comments. And San Diego is a total big shout out, and thank you for helping out with the comments, which I'm sure helps with the algorithm and everything. Here, someone sent this to me or tagged me. If I'm looking for more information on the beef broth codes by Die With The Most Likes, And apparently they are AI. And here are like 10 things about it. 666 images by Dye and Transient, so I guess a collaboration, is an example of how any artist can now use AI to create an aesthetically pleasing and meaningful collection. All they need is a vision and a story. The tech has become remarkably accessible, and here we see a lot of beef brothos. And of course, Dye with the Most Likes uses a lot of ground beef in his images, and so it's kind of a play on Rothko's using ground beef. Number 9. So I think that was kind of like the main thing. That ultimately confirming that there was AI. And this was hilarious. Kmart Blocks making fun of art blocks. Kmart Blocks presents, so satirizing art blocks. And here, just looking great as usual. Always fun with Dye with the Most Likes. So, yes. Confirmed, it is AI. Now, Unknown Collector, just before we get into the art here, I guess first I'll show this other tweet, I think was responding to this. This artist, Paul Reed, at Minotaur Man. GM, Pulitzer Prize-winning art critic Jerry Saltz is not a fan, but you can judge for yourself at the exhibition in the Company of Monsters, Reading Museum from tomorrow. And so posted this image in all positivity, link in thread, and said, and here, excited to show Paul's work. And I assume this is real. There's Jerry Saltz, but this is horrendous. So as a result, I think, and I'm not positive, this came out from Unknown Collector. Who needs art critics? What do they add to the equation? Serious question is a noob. Curators, very much needed. They show art in a new or interesting context and positively showcase art. Critics give unsolicited advice in public, often destructive. Key word there. For constructive advice, there are teachers and fellow artists that can give advice, also negative feedback, but in a much safer space. So what are critics for besides peeing on an artist in public and being biased tastemakers for rich people? Yeah, and I mean, I found it actually, I found this shocking. I'm sure a lot of people did. If it's real, like, I mean, I almost think it's so shocking that is this how out of touch these people are? That Jerry Saltz is, that he's going to some guy and just calling his work horrendous, particularly in his role. But I mean, I've brought up Jerry Saltz before as being kind of dubious. Months ago, we kind of went through the feed and kind of analyzed the feed a little bit, and there's just something very, again, for lack of to be general about it, just kind of dubious about the whole posture, shall we say. And so as Trippy Collector, Zachy B commented and actually said something nice about the show. And as I said here, like, I don't consider this show, some people call it reviews and stuff. Like, I don't consider them reviews, but I'm okay with whatever people really want to call this. Again, it's an artist journal. I'm really just talking about the art of other people. And as I said in my comment here to Trippy Collector, it's like, I consider this very bad form. Like, and this is the thing. And as I also wrote in that comment, like, what has Jerry Saltz ever done as an artist? Like, to me, there's no credibility. Like, this whole idea of the art critic, like, show me your work, and then I'll be able to tell, at least, like, I'm not saying nobody should have an opinion on art that hasn't made art, but I think you should be more moderate in your opinion if you haven't really, struggled and understand what it is to put out your art. This person is putting out their art, to our earlier discussion here, for the world to see, and then some, like, the most famous art critic in the world goes to step on this person. And to me, this is what's wrong, not just with the culture of contemporary art, this is kind of what's wrong with contemporary society, that somehow someone thinks that this is a reasonable thing to do, a not horrible thing to do. So, don't want to go on a rant here, but as I've always said, like, if I don't like a work, I don't talk about it, and I don't even, like, it's sort of like, I understand the struggle. Because all artists have put out a bunch of schlocky works. Okay? That's the reality. and so ideally, and every so often you have to kind of clean up your catalog, and hopefully you get to a point where you don't need to do that anymore. But as you develop as an artist, you're not going to be Picasso or Leonardo from your first piece, okay? And you're going to evolve and develop. So, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on that. Moving on, Jake Fried. So we saw the Post-it notes yesterday. Here is an even much more elaborate version, if that is what this is. And so just super cool. Look at how much work has gone into this. Just really, really interesting. And again, it kind of makes you think of the GIF. It's almost like a physical GIF, right? Of sorts here, kind of. Also very interesting from Luciana Guerra. This is a test I made while trying to take some digitals to oil painting. What do you think, left or right? So this is the oil version, and this is the digital version. And I find this incredibly interesting because, of course, this is a temptation you're going to have as an artist if you're making work digitally and you go, first of all, how am I going to make this physical? This is one of the problems that you have to solve if that's something you want to do. And there are many ways to do it. And what's interesting about this is I don't think this is not a perfect reproduction of this is the digital work. And if you, for example, if you look at, say, like this, I almost want to call it this placenta or oval shape here. And then you see there's a green thing coming down, kind of green wire thing. If you look here, it looks like a slightly different shape and a slightly different wire. So not a perfect, so using, from what I can tell, if the digital work is first, and that I'm not clear on, using one as the inspiration for the other. I tried to take some digitals to oil painting. So sounding like taking this to oil painting. So similar, but not exactly. In other words, not using a projector is actually the first thing I would notice on this, because that is, again, the temptation. And the problem with, say, doing a projector is it can be tedious and it can feel really stilted. So probably a smart move here by kind of keeping it loose and using the other as inspiration rather than as a direct transcription. So all just very interesting and I think very cool. And it's great to see these are important conversations, I would argue, visual conversations that are occurring here. So I think just really cool from Luciana Guerra. And just an interesting comment from Rada. What a privilege it is. What a privilege is to have been born in the age of video games, grow with them, see them evolve. Having been fortunate enough to experience each generation of processing power, some titles will be around even after our extinction, while most of them are already lost forever. We used to play for fun, now they may very well play with you. Gamification in all aspects of our digital lives is here, and it's quote-unquote free. Yes, so as we become I assume, if I'm to interpret this right, as we kind of become the products or the playthings, so to speak, of these algorithms playing with us, so maybe good training here. I thought just an interesting, profound thought, and of course, many people started with Rada here, and here's a rat done pixel art style beautifully, by the way. I started really collecting digital art on the blockchain probably with Rada's work. I think it's the first or the second work, if you look in my collection, that I bought, and I spent way too much money, but it was all worth it, on Rada's Cosmo de Medici on Tezos, because I couldn't afford the Ethereum ones. It was during the height of the bull market. So anyways, interesting thoughts, Rada, as usual. Underworld by the Myth. Look at this epic painting. It's a little racy, and I like to call this a family show, so I'm not going to zoom in, even though it'd be great to zoom in. But there's all sorts of mayhem going on here, and so I'm going to leave it like this. But this is a really, epic painting here from Myth, and brilliant composition here. And again, really cool. A Tezos, a classic Tezos artist, also on Super Rare and on Ethereum. Just really classic work here. This is an edgy one. And here you have, the Myth is the Grim Reaper. Just a lot of just brilliant, brilliant work here. Mysterious. You have the crucifixion. You have this character with what looks like the wrestling mask peering over the landscape here. There's something very Dalinian, Salvador Dali-like about Myth's work. And I have to say, I quite like this little gradient here in the sky, which I think is kind of a development. And even here in the water, he's becoming a little, he started as a Microsoft Paint painter, artist, as far as I understand. But what's interesting, kind of to our earlier discussion about Procreate, and I believe this was probably made on Procreate, he's becoming more oil painting like in the last, let's say, year, from what I can tell. So that's kind of interesting. And this looks like an oil painting, a digital oil painting. So interesting work from Myth there. I don't think it is, you might need to go, offers are coming in. So you might need to go to the Twitter feed to find out if you want a copy. It's only an edition of 12. Another work by Uxine here, The Stone Monkey. This is put out with Explainer, and there is a story here about this monkey. And this almost reminds you of the Bored Ape skull here. And so another work by Uxine. This is available for 60 Tezos. Let's quickly see what happened here. So selling for 49 on primary. So someone is just trying to make 10 Tezos. That's kind of funny. And yeah, I guess the flippers will do what they can, and that's fine. Sometimes it brings liquidity into the market and an opportunity to buy again, sometimes. So interesting work here with this kind of friar monkey with the beautifully done here halo and kind of drawn in. Again, looks like Procreate, doesn't it? And here you have, there's a lot going on in Uxine's work that's very symbolic. Again, I'd like to call him, I think, like a narrative painter. The homunculi, the little person, the interesting kind of a white empty flag, which could, in one way, it could be surrender, but it kind of seems positive with the serene look of the ape here. Who knows? Beautiful classic colors from Uxine. This egg is super interesting too. And here you can read the whole story. So Explainer Gallery, I believe out of Shanghai, continues to really show leadership in collaborating with a lot of these artists. We see them with Popple. I think I've done a collaboration with Explainer, and many Tezos artists have, and just really great to work with in my experience. Rustic Digital Art. So we saw this work, and this was the work that was posted on Twitter, but here we have a bit of yellow added in. We see the finished version here, and remember in the comments on that we were looking at earlier where Rustic was talking about these Van Gogh-like landscapes. This is basically what we're talking about. This screams, from a compositional perspective, Impressionism. So just really cool work, again, from Rustic Digital Art. This is 21 Tezos on secondary, and there is basically one left, two at 21 Tezos. Nuv 1914 with the new work here, Frutilla. So a strawberry done in this very experimental style here. And this wonderful kind of gradient flowers here, and not just a simple gradient, kind of on a diagonal there. And the brilliant petals here, the brilliant strawberry. I quite like how Nuv breaks up, whether it's a horse or whatever, often breaks up into pieces, the work. And just a very, very, again, when we talk about having the courage of your convictions from an aesthetic point of view, really pursuing your thesis, so to speak, and being consistent with it. Nuv 1914, kind of a new favorite here. And Curio Alt has picked up a couple, and so they all sold out on primary at 5 Tezos. Now you have to pay 3,000. And it does, I thought to myself, maybe one day this will sell for 3,000. It's kind of it's a fun thought exercise, not financial advice, and who knows, and maybe, as they say, not going to be worth anything among every other NFT, perhaps. Web Lilies, don't buy. This was pretty cool. I think Skomra had this in his feed, and yeah, Skomra picked this up for only 15 Tezos. Thought a pretty interesting still life here with what looks like what do they call it? The BSOD, the blue screen of death. Looks like the blue screen or maybe something else is going on in here. Actually, some more racy story is going on in there. Web Lilies, edition of 3 from Don't Buy, a new artist I haven't seen before. Now, I've seen Lydia Moon, and she's on Zora. with a new pretty cool work here. This looks like an open mint here, free mint, and just a really original, interesting internet artist here, and just cool animation here, kind of glitched out, a lot of airbrush here, and just super original work here. From Lydia Moon, free mint, so hard to pass that up. On Zora, the magical Zorb. Interesting experimentation, speaking of the airbrush, with Santiago. This is how to use pants. And it looks like AI, doesn't it? But again, I don't even know anymore. Maybe this is where programming meets AI. It's definitely got an AI feel to it. But just really interesting abstract here. Santiago on a roll. And here's another work by Santiago. Path inside a map, inside an envelope, hidden at plain sight, seeing you get older. These are just so incredibly... I love this series. And I love the development of this series. Again, I feel like we're watching, like, not an anthology. What do they call those exhibitions that look back on your entire oeuvre? It feels like we're looking at that in real time with Santiago putting out work like every day. Another just really awesome work here. Unit London Digital. I assume they're related to Unit London and that this is their digital series. I'd never seen this person before. This appeared in my Instagram. A curated selection of test outputs from It's Gallo, newest long-form project. Rappers, join us at our Mayfair Gallery on Wednesday, 27th of September, and for an opportunity to mint one in real life. That's an interesting way to get people in the gallery, isn't it? Come to the gallery and you can mint one. Then we'll put the link on the computer for you to mint to your wallet. So just interesting, would hang pretty well with Santiago there. So just interesting abstract digital art. And here's Quampa with a new piece. This is, I think it's a new piece, Blast of Colors and Form. This was posted by Lonely Boy, arriving on Verseworks on October 12th. So I'm not sure if we've seen this one or not. Maybe we can make it slightly bigger here. But just more beautiful mayhem with what looks like the modern version of Microsoft Paint here from Quampa. When we see the screenshots, that is what it looks like. So really interesting artist. And again, I'm kind of back to yesterday's theme of pushing the frontiers, you know, of like new aesthetic experience here. Because again, if someone asked you to make a work in Microsoft Paint, if that's what this is, you might be challenged, right? And we saw, you know, Quampa posted the work the other day. The first work, I think I don't know if it was January 2022 or 2023, where this style started. I think it was 2023, and kind of a humble work, right? And you see how far things can come very quickly here. That's why if you want to be a digital painter, let's say you're inspired by, say, Uxine and Rare, like you actually can do it with Procreate, I would argue, with a whole bunch of work, but it's doable. Tornado Rodriguez with a cool work. I've submitted my work Diving into the Unknown to Hug XYZ for the billboard display at Shibuya Crossing, Tokyo. You can vote for my piece here. So another work by Tornado that I haven't seen, and if you want to help her out, you can just follow the Twitter feed there, and there it looks almost like a lava volcano. Where are we? So another just journey into Tornado's imagination here, with all sorts of beautiful things going on, would fit beautifully into old underground comics from the 60s and 70s, I feel, and even in the subject matter. And this maybe is Tornado in another parallel world with these beautiful constellations here. And this pyramid on top, just brilliant and beautiful, and these dilated pupils. With too good. Igor Kapustin, Venice. This is great. I picked this up. I thought this was brilliant and original and strange. You know, Igor Kapustin I discovered from Louis Osborne's feed in his collection maybe about a year ago. And he has a lot of collectors, Igor Kapustin, and usually fairly low editions of 10 here. I found that, you know, just an interesting illustrator. And I found this one particularly interesting in the sense that it looks like a canal in Venice with, instead of a gondola, I mean, this looks more like a canoe, and then someone walking across the canoe, almost as if they're walking on the street. So it feels quite surreal, this one. and almost like a bit of a fall feeling with what look like leaves coming down. So interesting piece here by Igor Kapustin. A lot of creativity and just interesting and original. Skamra. And even though there's AI, I believe, in these works, they still feel like more in the painting section for some reason. And I'm not sure, I think Skamra explained it, but I'm not sure if Skamra is drawing this out or if these kind of illustrations are coming out of AI and then they're kind of rendered. Because the textures feel like AI. And the textures is maybe why it feels like such a painterly work. But the drawings themselves kind of look like as if they're drawn. And beautiful down here as well. So I'm not sure if these have been minted yet. But really nice kind of noise at the bottom here too. So just very interesting and beautiful work, and a GM from Skamra. All over this show lately. Good for her. Good for Skamra. Lorna Mills, Mighty Oops. So not sure if this is, it looks like a melting popsicle or ice cream popsicle. Really nice piece. Beautiful red here. And just interesting subject, and interesting how Lorna is putting the red, matching the reds, and then putting this great yellow. And you know what that does as as I'm realizing as I look at this, the ice cream, it's almost like it gives a sense of fire, probably on purpose, of this melting popsicle. Cool work, 20 Tezos on primary, and there are 20 left. Cool work from Slava 3, GM Garbage. So a garbage work with GM in it on the screen here, cycling through. I'm not going to leave it on too long because of the flash, but really cool colors here from Slava 3. And that is $12.90, and it's an open edition that has finished. So that is on secondary. Anis Abdin with a cool pixel art work. Just, very prolific, actually. Has a ton of work. We saw the camel quickly yesterday on Foundation, and here you just see, beautiful streetlights. And then you see the snow being lit up by the light, and even just how it's the detail on the light here. And the reflection and the blue. A lot of decisions in here in these kind of very, not too many colors in this work. RGB. Very cool. And mech.txt, a $0 painting, 1985, colorized. So more experiments in color here from mech.txt, who we had to rush through way too fast last time. Well, I think I'll try and come back to those Foundation works. I had to really go through those fast last time. Very cool, incorporating a bit of a Windows operating system into the style, which is very interesting. And here you have a character with a word bubble. So continuing to experiment here. Beautiful trees here. Interesting colors and everything. Gets a ton of views here. Consistently. Mech.txt, 17,000 followers. That's about the same as Uxine, by the way. That's pretty good. So pretty impressive. Now, I think this is Popple. And Popple retweeted it with a comment. I can't remember exactly. I must have lost the Popple tweet, but this looks exactly like from the Stadt something series. This is definitely Popple. And even with this kind of little half opaque user interface here. So just another cool Popple pixel art piece here with the chunky pixels in that series, and almost like some sort of sigil here. Just very cool. And cryptic Popple. Wonderful work. CUDA, Antimatter Research Center. I thought this was a really great topic, and nicely done here. And what looks like some sort of Halon Collider type thing on the screen here, and an Antimatter Research Center. This is 12 Tezos, and that's on secondary, selling out at only 5 Tezos. So cool work from CUDA, cool pixel artwork, cool colors. Mayu, interesting, kind of a similar palette, not identical, but similar, isn't it? With a few more colors added in, and Mayu continues to be super prolific, putting out work almost every day. 9 left for 550 on primary. And a fun, kind of innocent, cool work here of someone fishing, the skeleton character fishing with a big sun. I think maybe that's a moon, because the sun looks like it has shadows on it. Maybe that's a moon. Sunset fishing. Maybe it's a big sun. And maybe that's just a way of portraying the different color of the sun. All to say, really cool work here. Nice animation. Cool foreground, too. I wonder if Cyberhen is Rata. Sometimes Cyberhen, and here you see Pi Rescription Tezos 30. This was a really cool series that I came to very early on, or artist Cyberhens on Tezos. This is 7 Tezos 10 cents, 114 edition, and what looks like a Rata pirate here. Just a very, very cool series, very kind of trading card-esque. Tezos classic, the Pirate Rat of the Digital Seas. And so, yeah, you can read everything here. Hosted by the genesis of Tezos was at Tezrats, hosted by the quirky Rata and weird NFT artist. And thanks to the collective genius of Natty and Pixel brought him to life. So there you go, a cool work by Cyberhens. And here is Zoxo, another cool, this is an open edition, open for another day here. Again, playing with what looks like Super Mario Brothers iconography. And just, making it look like some sort of jackpot, slot machine meets Super Mario. Fascinating. Video games, Kitty Training 4, another new work by Gogolitis, animated pixel art, 64 frames. So again, playing with the cat video game here, moving its way through a pixel art factory with these wonderful, this looks like a new edition of the last few works of these kind of sparkling, shimmering, I guess this is a ramp of a certain kind within here. So very nice work here, and you can just follow the cat through the whole thing. And it looks like also circuit board kind of style, a little bit more circuit board style in these recent works. I think taking offers, go to Gogolitis's feed, Twitter feed, for if you want to get one. And this is also a Gogolitis collaboration, I think. Final piece of art from my curated drop for Red Lion, Atomic Wonders. Elementary bricks by the one and only Gogolitis, freely claimable with Gazette number 158. So a pretty cool work here, isn't it? Nice and simple, and just taking elements like the slider and then, putting it together, putting the colors instantly recognizable as Gogolitis with that palette. And of course, Kareem Safa, another pixel art factory artist. I'm very excited to share with you Monolithic Machines. So I believe we already looked at this. This is arriving on Verseworks. We've looked at it several times, actually. We've looked at the NFT, or like the main work, and we've also looked at it on the building in Manchester several times. But there are 10 limited editions with the components. And so here it is, and Verse has a really nice website. Again, a lot of these websites come and go, but Verse has stayed very consistent and is doing a pretty nice job, if you ask me. And so it looks like this is going to, I don't know if it's going to be auctioned or what, but on Friday at September 29th at 6 p.m. So this is the main work, Monolith, cool title. But here, almost referencing perhaps 2001: A Space Odyssey, maybe, the phone, who knows. Here are the components. So let me just see here. So here's number 2. And so just interesting. Number 3, I must have missed number 1 here, but we're going to go through most of them here because they're pretty cool, as you can see, just as components. So turning, again, elements of a work and then basically, as we can in digital, reproducing them all over the thing, costs us nothing, and all of a sudden you have new, interesting works. Why shouldn't you do this? You'd almost be foolish not to. It's like, would Warhol just make one screen print and then, okay, I'm done? Or is Warhol going to make editions of 125, then I'm going to put it on canvas, then I'm going to, do it to the max? So here, Kareem Safa is using the components, the elements, and making new works with them. And I think it's brilliant and really nicely animated here, by the way. It feels alive. Really nice work. Works unto themselves, number 5. Right, so here's like almost like the acid or breaking it down. Here's another one, number 6. So it's quite brilliant and, from a commercial perspective, quite smart. Just nice sliders here. And another one. I also think it's really interesting how, you can download this yourself. I always find that interesting and cool. So another one, here's one more, number 8. We'll just kind of quickly go through these here. So just very, very cool. And components number 9. So going through the whole thing here, so it should be a pretty awesome drop. And look at number 10. Just very, 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 very cool. I assume this is on Ethereum, but I'm not sure. And so that's Kareem Safa on Friday. Deniris with an interesting work here. New drop, BG Ellis GIF. Just triste, just sad. And here, what looks like Tetris. Tetris rendered with kind of ASCII or PETSCII or some kind of text. So just interesting work here. And continuing on, Françoise Gamma with OK Digital X Talk. So some sort of collaboration here. This is 7 Tezos. There are 13 left. And we're seeing more of these horizontal lines, aren't we? I love these horizontal lines. There's something just kind of wonderfully retro about them. I use some of them too. I love them. We saw that in quite a few artists recently, and I think it's just a fun trend. So this is just a nice, interesting new work from Françoise Gamma and OK Digital. Kurt Hustle Collective with a pretty cool Sumo Roboto DBO Sports. Let's just make this bigger. So, I mean, cryptic as well as usual. Pretty cool animation here. Very done with a lot of care here, as usual, from Kurt Hustle Collective. 50 Tezos edition of 5, and there are 3 left. And Haiti Rocket in with the sale. Awesome. Coda Nakazono with another work here. I don't think we saw this one yesterday. Continuum number 155. So again, super prolific. And look at how beautiful this is. This masking. And I love how the pixelation doesn't match. That looseness just makes things even more interesting and more kind of arty, for lack of a better word. It's like, it's when Warhol doesn't get the registration perfect when he screen prints. That makes it, even better, even more poetic. It makes it more art. It's that irrational component, isn't it? So here, just beautiful. And then you got to love the paint stroke here. There's a paint splash in the background, some noise, and then this big kind of metallic biomorphic form here. This is 80 Tezos, I assume on secondary, and sold out for 25 on primary. Very cool. Nice take. 125 Tezos. DJ Kuro with what I thought was a pretty poetic work here. I think this is called Rhyme, but not positive. Look at all this crazy writing here. I love it. Edition of 1 for only 18 Tezos. Very nice piece, if you ask me. Just poetic. I love the minimalism and the colors. It kind of, I don't know if it evokes for me a little bit a Tombly in the space and just kind of the random brushwork kind of put around, although this is, of course, analog glitch video. And zooming through here, another work by Klaus on 01. So this is called Blob. So just an animated abstract work with cool experimentation, also analog glitch here on 01, which I still need to mint something on. All collected. So selling out analog video feedback Blob. Very cool. And Martin Joe back on the scene, the last tweet. You are now free, little one. So interestingly, let me just maximize this. So the Twitter, it has an X on it, and it looks like the X has created the pool of blood, and there is the X again with the signature killing off the Twitter bird. So interesting topical work from Martin Joe, edition of 10. There are 5 left for 5 Tezos. The last tweet. Interesting piece here by Introvoid. Digital painting and collaged AI as we kind of shift over to AI a little bit. Something inside slipping over the edge. Again, really pushing some experimentation here, isn't it? AI, and kind of has a bit of a Venta feel, but quite different too. Really interesting piece here from Introvoid. A 1 of 1, and let's just see what happened. Transferred to 1 of 1. So pretty interesting piece. And this is, I believe, Magician or Magician. I call Magician. If you see this Magician, feel free to correct me on the pronunciation. I'd call it Magician, and a cool AI work with, I think, some Photoshop, if I remember the tweet. So just interesting painting and just an interesting composition here. All collected on 01, always on my mind. And there's even a YouTube. I might have to check that out. Very cool. Paper Doll is back, just the two of us with another AI digital artwork. A very beautiful composition here. big kind of green, kind of painted, very painterly AI artwork. Great colors here. It's just like a beautiful painting, but it's AI. And who would know? And again, we're kind of back to Luciana Guerra. I mean, another way of approaching this is basically you never release the AI and you make a painting out of it. Isn't that interesting? But it does, like, and let's say you think about that, but then you think, well, why would I do that? Because this is quite a beautiful digital painting, and AI is topical. So why aren't I just releasing the AI as Paper Doll is doing? And so maybe that is the thing that makes the most sense. So, and it's sometimes, we can overcomplicate the art making process. Sometimes you just got to say, this is good, and I'm just going to release this. And there's Danielle King, Kika Nikolela, Danielle King, an AI artist. I think Kika Nikolela as well. So you got AI artists, heck, Porta Malmar, Outsider, Green Dude. So great collectors out there for Paper Doll. And you probably recognize who this is. This is the one and only Strange Thing. Good morning, everyone, and a happy Monday. Made in AI, ancient Greek-inspired modern footwear. So here we see what looks like AI-created temple here as a high top of sorts, or as footwear, and just hilarious and interesting. Again, combining classicism, going beyond Renaissance now, just combining classicism. That would almost be how I'd describe Strange Thing right now, combining classicism and fashion in a very interesting way. And again, when you start referencing the classics, it kind of, insulates you a little bit from the, what you call it, the slings and arrows of time, right? Because now you're referencing, you're quoting things that have been around and for thousands of years, that play very prominent roles in the tradition. Tim Lahan. We've looked at a lot of Tim Lahan's work. Look at the edge here. I want you to see, this is a physical work, and beautifully doing these pixels here, this kind of pixel mask. And here, and again, that beautiful contrast of the spray with the hard edge pixel, not too hard edge. Hopefully this is exactly what I was hoping for a little bit of a zoom in, and you see how imperfect this is. Looks like hand drawn. So just beautiful. Permission to Land, 15 by 22 inches. Just an awesome, awesome artist. Again, challenging aesthetics. Very cool. Joao Salazar, this was super interesting. I don't know what a xylograph is. And xylograph and acrylic on paper, work in progress. So maybe that's kind of like a lithograph is what that looks like, but it's a xylograph. And then painting with it. I assume the xylograph is the black and white. And then, again, the acrylic is probably the color. And here's another one, Web 9, a fragment here from Joao Salazar. Just look at how beautiful this is, and resolved. It's very resolved, isn't it? As we used to say in art school. And nice documentation here, by the way. And this looks like plasticine, not painting. This is definitely plasticine. There's a Bitcoin. Very, very, very cool. Summing up the culture, really, in its own way. And this is my friend Ben, Benham Art. I saw this on Instagram, and I thought this was great. Often does memes. Again, water-based oil painting on paper. And I thought this was a great one. Nice texture there, very prolific. It's been prolific for years, and it really shows, even shows nice documentation here. Great work. Had to restart his Instagram like a year ago, 2 years ago, because just he got locked out and he couldn't access the email address. So be careful on that. Thank you for joining me once again. Hopefully I see you guys. Hopefully I see everyone at the Art Talk or the Twitter space tomorrow with Artemort. Until next time, take care.